Hey guys, what's up? It's Darknick here and welcome back to another video. Today we are covering off part 2 of the Shadowlands Blood Death Knight guide. So we're going to talk and cover Covenants, Soulbinds, Conduits and Legendaries today. So before I get into it, just want to pass on and say a huge thank you to both Mandel and Panthea for all the information that I am pretty much about to share with you. It wouldn't be possible to make this guide to the standard that I want and that you deserve without the work that these guys put in behind the scenes. So a huge thank you to those guys. You can find both these individuals in the Acarus community. They also both write the guides that you read on Wowhead for the Blood DK. So all the links to the Wowhead guide in the Acarus community are in the pinned comment below with the timestamps and all that kind of stuff. So let's get into it. 4 Covenant choices when you make your way into Shadowlands. You've got Kyrian, Venthia, Night Fae, and Necrolord. So each Covenant comes with 2 signature abilities that you gain access to by allying yourself with one of those Covenants. So we're going to cover off the Covenants. I'm going to go through their abilities right now. So Kyrian, Shackle the Unworthy is their signature ability. So admonish your target for their past transgressions, reducing the damage they deal to you by 5%, and you deal a percentage of your attack power as arcane damage over 14 seconds. Whilst Shackle the Unworthy is active on an enemy, your rune spenders, so Heartstrike and Marrowrend, have a 50% chance to spread Shackle to a nearby enemy within 8 yards. So there's no cost to this. It has a 30-yard range, instant cast on a 1-minute cooldown. Summon Steward is the Covenant's minor ability. This calls a steward to your side who has a File of Serenity, which can be consumed to restore 20% of your health and remove all curses, diseases, poisons, and bleed effects. Your steward additionally offers you access to a selection of other useful amenities for 4 minutes. He is an instant cast on a 5-minute cooldown. Venthia, Swarming Mists is the main signature ability of the Covenant. A heavy mist surrounds you for 8 seconds, increasing your dodge chance by 10%. It deals 20% of your attack power as shadow damage every 1 second to enemies within 10 yards. Every time it deals damage, you gain 3 runic power up to a maximum amount of 15 runic power per tick per enemy. It has a 1 rune cost, it's on an instant cast and a 1-minute cooldown. The minor ability for Venthia is Door of Shadows. You wend through the shadows, appearing at the target's location. This is basically a 35-yard blink. The catch is it comes with a 1.5 second cast time. You get 1 charge and it is on a 1-minute cooldown. Night Fae. So Death's Due, so this replaces Death and Decay, corrupts the targeted ground, causing shadow damage over 10 seconds to targets within the area. Death's Due reduces the damage that enemies deal to you by 1% up to a maximum of 8%, and their power is transferred to you as an equal amount of strength, also up to 8%. So while you remain within the area, it functions just like Death and Decay in regards to your Heartstrike will hit up to 4 additional targets and inflict Death's Due for 12 seconds. It costs 1 rune, instant cast, 30-yard range, 15-second cooldown. Night Fae's minor ability is Soul Shape. So this turns you into a Vulpin, teleporting you 15 yards forwards and increasing your movement speed by 50%. You may reactivate Soul Shape every few seconds to teleport again as well. It lasts 12 seconds or indefinitely whilst you are in a rested area. It's an instant cast on a 1.5-minute cooldown. It is also worth noting as you progress through Hogwarts that you can learn other forms of Patronuses. Moths, Runestag, Unicorns, Terraclaws, Cranes, Lions, Tigers, Bears, oh my, Hyenas, Cobras, Dragons, Turtles, Stags, Owlcats, Night Sabers, Raptors, Moose, Wolf, Featherdrake, Wolfhawk, Hippogriff, Griffin, Werven, and Toad. Nailed it. Necrolord. So their signature main ability is Abomination Limb. Sprout an additional limb for 12 seconds. Every 1 second it deals damage or shadow damage to 5 nearby enemies and pulls an enemy to your location if they are further than 8 yards away from you. The first time the limb pulls an enemy to your location, you'll gain 3 stacks of Bone Shield. You can only pull the same enemy once every 4 seconds. It has no cost attached to it, 20-yard range, it's an instant cast on a 2-minute CD. Necrolord's minor ability, Fleshcraft. So you form a shield of flesh and bone over 4 seconds that prevents damage taken equal to 20% of your maximum health. Channeling near a corpse claims their essence to grow that shield up to 50% of your maximum health. It's got a 10-yard range, 4-second channel time, 2-minute cooldown. So, they're the Covenants. and they're their abilities that go along with them. So now, does your choice matter? And I think this is a really important topic to cover off moving into Shadowlands, with so many questions going on around Covenants and Soulbinds and everything else that goes with it. So, if your main purpose of gameplay in the World of Warcraft is centered around the story, leveling up, doing, a +10 to a 15 key, you might do Alpha, you might do normal, you might do heroic, and then eventually you might step into mythic raiding. If this is you, then you are absolutely free to pick whatever covenant that tickles your pickle. It will not matter to you. This is a huge factor, this decision, in a world first format or a Fame Slayer, top world or highly ranked mythic plus keys. But if you are not in that bracket, then this choice does not carry as much weight as so many people are making it out to do. At the time of making this video, we're 4 and a bit days away from Shadowland launch. 3 of the 4 covenants function well in a raid format. 3 out of the 4 covenants are acceptable in Mythic Plus to a decent level. So don't get so bent out of shape if there is a particular covenant that you really, really want to go, but you feel like you can't because you won't be able to complete the content that you are seeking to do. The only case you'll get that is if you're Necrolord, and then you're screwed. I'm just joking. Aside from that, if you do want to squeeze, every little bit out of, your beloved class and covenant, and you want to, regardless of content, you just want to have the best, then yes, your choice will have an impact, and we're going to cover that off now. So, what is the best covenant for raiding? So at the moment, moving into tier 1, it's Kyrian. So Kyrian at the moment will be the top choice for the coming tier 1 raid due to its minor ability, the ability to move bleeds via file. So even though it's the Covenant's minor ability, it's where the true power and strength of this Covenant actually lies moving into this raid tier. The latest fix to file removed some of the bleeds that could be purged with file. However, a majority of the bleeds in Castle Nathria can still be removed via its use, including the last boss, Denathrius's tank swap bleed, Carnage. So, with the Soulbind tree of Pelagos as well, even after its recent nerf, it's still an extremely powerful choice. You get combat meditation straight up, providing a mastery buff when you use your Kyrian Covenant ability. The cap at the end of the tree now has been changed to a magic damage reduction that goes up to 3%, which, isn't as great as versatility, but it's still there. Kyrian's signature ability, Shackle the Unworthy, deals solid damage, and it also grants you, when it's active on the target, a 5% damage reduction as well from that target. You can also gain, as I said, the mastery buff from combat meditation, which you can be used to extend that buff as well by collecting the orbs that spawn, which generally isn't too much of a hassle. You can use your rune spenders, Heartstrike and Marrowrend on cleave fights, and you get a 50% chance to spread that dot to the nearby target and also gain the damage reduction from them. It is, however, worth noting, it's not a refreshed duration when it's spread, it's current duration. We did have a refreshed duration at one stage. It was too much fun, it was way too powerful, so I took it away. So, that's the Raid Covenant. What's the best covenant for Mythic Plus? Venthia. So Venthia at the moment is going to be the go-to choice for Mythic Plus. With a seemingly heavy kite focus coming out of a lot of the dungeons in Mythic Plus in Shadowlands so far, especially early on in the piece, Swarming Mist is going to be a great avenue for pumping and dumping. You'll get in, you'll drop your damage, you'll survive thanks to the dodge and the extra, more importantly, the extra runic power gained from Mists, and then you'll just leg it like OJ. Swarming Mist gives you access to absolutely ridiculous amounts of runic power gain on a 1 minute cooldown. You do get the 10% dodge for 8 seconds whilst it's active, and you get a massive burst of AoE damage whilst it's going off. Venthia also functions far better than Kyrian in the multiple mob situations because Swarming Mist gains more and more value the more enemies that it's activated in. Soulbind wise, Venthia offers actually quite a lot of versatility around what you can do. Naja offers a more offensive style output via Thrill Seeker. Whilst you're in combat, you build stacks that buff up to 40 stacks. When it's unleashed, you gain 20% haste for 10 seconds. And Exacting Preparation boosts the effects of your food, flasks, and rune forges by 20%. We have General Draven, who's more of an EHP pillow style tank route. It's got Service in Stone, which is basically like a pseudo Will of the Necropolis. Enduring Gloom, which turns your Door of Shadows into a 15% max HP shield. And then Hold Your Ground, which if you can remain still for 4 seconds, grants you 10% stamina and 4% increased healing. So there's a bit of versatility that goes along with Venthia, and it's definitely the Mythic Plus pick. So what about the other two Covenants if you had your heart set on going them? So we're going to cover them off now. Night Fae, it's still a solid choice, though after the nerf and the change to the way that Death's Due interacts, it became a lot more finicky to min-max the strength and the damage reduction out of that. The nerf in beta saw the ability go from 15% to 8%, so that was about basically a 40% nerf to the maximum damage reduction provided, but it also changed how the strength buff and the damage reduction was applied. And this kind of saw Night Fae go from its, top we're going to be Butterfly Death Knights and things like that, to really lose some of its appeal because it gets stacked by Rune Expenders now, or Heartstrike and Marin. So what you want to do if you do go along the playstyle of choosing Night Fae is your last GCD coming out of your Death's Due, you're going to want to use Heartstrike to try and extend your damage reduction or your strength buff so you can keep it rolling. If the pack dies, you lose the damage reduction, but you keep your strength stack so you can roll it into the next pack is the idea, but it does require some management. Outside of Death's Due, Night Fae is still an attractive option just in regards to pure mobility. It's always been a thorn in DK's side, but thanks to Soul Shape, you have an attractive solution to that issue with the 50% movement speed, 15-yard blink, 12 seconds of it on a minute and a half cooldown, so it's still not a bad choice. However, I do think the Soulbinds as well from Night Fae lack quite a bit in comparison to Venthia and Kyrian as well. It also has a huge issue around one of its Soulbinds with Dreamweaver and Pod Tender, so you've kind of nearly locked out of one of the Soulbinds automatically until Blizzard fix it. Necrolord, Abomination Limb. So even with the revamp, this ability is still bad. It might be 100% the go-to for PvP, but as a PvE standpoint, it just isn't good. It's so lackluster. The Limb has an ability to grip one mob every second for 12 seconds. So if you thought you were getting the equivalent of like another mass grip via Slappy Hand, think again. The mobs also have to be movable, so remember that not every mob in a dungeon you can grip. So if you can't grip them, if you can't move them, then this falls short on that too because it doesn't do anything against it. On top of it, it can only grip the same mob once every 4 seconds, so it can be wasted on that side. And you also can't control what it grips. Fleshcraft, while it might sound appealing, forming a shield over 4 seconds that prevents damage to equal to 20% of your max health and can go up to 50%, the caveat here is that it's a 4-second channel time that you have to stand still for unless you go down a Soulbind for. The shield gets eaten really quickly, and then you've just got a 2-minute CD again before you can stand still for 4 seconds and channel, which you wouldn't do in combat. The Soulbinds for Necro, again, leave a lot to be desired from. Emini is decent in regards to buffing your group for damage. And Bonesmith gives you, a decent output from an individual perspective, but they offer nothing defensively. So, Conduits, guys. So, you would have seen a lot about this, and if you still don't understand them, there are 15 ranks in total that you can progress through the expansion with your Conduits as you level them up. There are 3 types of Conduits: Potency, Endurance, and Finesse. And I'm going to go over them now. The idea when I go over them is I'm going to talk about them from rank 1, their rank 1 value, and then I'm going to talk about their rank 15 value. And then when I sort of go over the rankings for them, I'm going to be ranking them in their final stages of rank 15. And the reason being is I kind of want to make a video that will last a little bit, looking at things from an endgame perspective rather than, talking about sort of rank 1 levels now and how everything ranks. I'm going to be talking about it in a long game sort of view. So we're going to start off with Potency Conduits. So Potency Conduits, Withering Plague. So this deal makes your Heartstrike deal 1% more damage based on what your Conduit level is. So rank 1 will cause your Heartstrike to deal 15% extra damage, while rank 15 will cause Heartstrike to deal 36% increased damage. Debilitating Malady, Blood Boil increases the damage that enemies take from your Blood Plague by a certain percent for 6 seconds that can stack 3 times. Rank 1 increases the damage by 1%, and rank 15 increases the damage by 2.4%. Endurance Conduits, Hardened Bones, whilst Lichborn is active, the damage you take is reduced by a certain percent. So rank 1 will reduce the damage by 6% and rank 15 will reduce the damage by 14.2%. Insatiable Appetite, Deathstrike's minimum healing is increased by a certain percent. So rank 1 is 1%, rank 15 is 2.4%. Reinforced Shell, anti-magic zone's radius is increased by 15% and the duration is increased by the conduit's time. So rank 1 will give you 2 seconds extra of anti-magic zone. Rank 15 will give you 4.8 seconds extra. Blood Bond, Rune Tap heals you and your party for 1% of your max health. Rank 1 will see you heal your party for 2% and rank 15 will see you heal for 4.8%. Meat Shield increases the duration of your dancing rune weapon by 3 seconds, and whilst it's active, your parries are increase your maximum health by a certain percent that can stack 2 times for 15 seconds. So rank 1 is 2% and rank 15 is 4.8%. So you can nearly get 10% extra HP for 15 seconds if you can stack that twice. So then there are covenant-specific potency conduits. So I'm going to talk about them now, and each covenant has one of these, obviously. So Kyrian's potency conduit is Proliferation. Shackle the Unworthy has a percentage chance to spread to a near enemy each time it deals damage. So rank 1, you get a 20% extra chance. Rank 15, you get a 48% extra chance. Impenetrable Gloom, this is the Venthia potency conduit. Swarming Mists damage is increased by a certain percent of the conduit, so rank 1 is 12.5%, rank 15 is 30.5%. Brutal Grasp, this is Necrolord's potency conduit. Abomination Limb deals an increased amount of damage due to your specific to your conduit rank, so rank 1 is 15% extra damage, rank 15 is 36%. And Withering Ground, which is the Night Fae potency conduit. Death Deal deals an increased amount of damage. Rank 1 is 50%, and rank 15 is 120%. Last conduits are the Finesse conduits. So Chilled Resilience, Icebound Fortitude's cooldown is reduced by a certain amount of seconds. So rank 1 will reduce the cooldown by 20 seconds, and rank 15 will reduce the cooldown by 48 seconds. Fleeting Wind, Death's Advance grants an additional percentage of movement speed over the first 3 seconds. Rank 1, 15%. Rank 15, 36%. Spirit Drain. Successfully interrupting an enemy with Mind Freeze grants a certain amount of runic power refunded. Rank 1, 10 runic power. Rank 15, 24 runic power. And the last one, Unending Grip. Death's Grip slows the enemy movement speed by a certain percent for 5 seconds, or 3 seconds, sorry, it is now, I think. Rank 1 is 20% and rank 15 is 48%. So it's worth noting that all of these will probably change as we move towards the Mythic Raid release and then probably even still after, but that's where we're sitting at the moment. So let's talk about the conduits and which ones that you want to select. So as discussed, there are 3 types: potency, endurance, and finesse. So potency enhances your class damage, basically. Each covenant, as I mentioned, has a signature potency conduit that responds to its signature ability. So Kyrian had Proliferation, Night Fae Withering Ground, Venthia Impenetrable Gloom, and Necrolord Brutal Grasp. So, a general rule of thumb, super easy to remember: if you get a potency conduit and you can put your covenant one in there, do that. Full stop. Outside of the potency conduits for your covenant, Withering Plague is a really strong pick with the extra damage to Heartstrike. And then outside that, if you somehow ended up with 3 potency conduits or something odd like that, then you could go for Debilitating Milady. But covenant specific conduit for potency, and then Withering Plague is the second choice. Endurance conduits, so enhance your defensive capabilities, basically. Hardened Bones and Meat Shield are your 2 top picks here for endurance. Hardened Bones turns Lichborn into another defensive DR ability in the toolkit, which is fantastic, whilst Meat Shield grants you EHP and a slightly longer Dancing Rune weapon window. You'll find at lower levels that Meat Shield will be a better choice first up as a conduit, and then as we get to higher conduit levels, Hardened Bones will probably become a better pick. Outside of these 2, if you have a third option for an endurance conduit, Reinforced Shell is a viable option, especially on heavy magic damage encounters where your AMZ is being used on certain mechanics. It'll also see a lot of play in raids. Finesse Conduits. These are general utility enhancements or just niche parts of your kit. So Spirit Drain is the absolute standout, especially in Mythic Plus. It is going to be your best option. You are interrupting so often in Mythic Plus, you are going to see over the course of a dungeon a very large amount of runic power generated from this ability. Even on raid fights that have interrupts, this will still be the go-to. The next best option, and I don't even know why it's a Finesse Conduit, is Chilled Resilience, which will give you further access to Icebound Fortitude by reducing its cooldown. But outside of that, that's pretty much it. So they're your two options around Finesse Conduits. If you are just playing full raid mode and there's no interrupts on that fight, then I would be going with Chilled Resilience. So, moving into Soulbinds now, guys, and we'll have a look at these and what your best choices are for each covenant. We'll cover a couple of trees off for each. So, we'll start with Kyrian and Pelagos. So, Pelagos is the best pick from Kyrian. You get Combat Meditation, which is the mastery buff. You get File of Patience, which is a dot heal over 10 seconds. And then you get Let Go of the Past, which was a fantastic verse buff, but was, it made Pelagos such a strong tree. They changed it to a 1% magic damage reduction on a hit combo style stacking game, which can go to 3% for 6 seconds. Following this pathway that I've got on the screen here, you'll end up with 1 Potency Conduit, 2 Endurance, and 1 Finesse. So Pelagos is extremely strong, especially from a progression point of view. As I mentioned, with Kyrian, the file is already so strong with being able to remove bleeds. You get your Kyrian bonus with your 5% DR, and then you end up stacking Pelagos on top of that. You get your mastery buff, which you can continue to extend by selecting the orbs. You get a decent conduit setup with the 1 Finesse, 1 Potency, and 2 Endurance. And if you, as I said, if you are raiding and you don't need the interrupt on the Finesse Conduit, you can switch it out for Chilled Resilience and get more frequent uptime on Icebound Fortitude if it was at all required. Clea is the second tree we're going to talk about, and she's a possibility. So Valiant Strikes got changed recently, so it's now your critical strikes grant you stacks of Valiant Strikes up to 20. If a nearby party member drops below 50% health, you consume these stacks to heal them for 1% of their maximum health per stack. After healing this way, you may not benefit from Valiant Strikes for 1 minute. She also has Cleansing Rites, so after 5 seconds out of combat, you gain a shield for 10% of your max HP. And she has Pointed Courage, which gain 1% critical strike from surrounding enemies or allies up to 8%. So Clea is not a bad option either. Following a path like this I've got on the screen, you'll end up with 1 Potency, 2 Endurance, and 1 Finesse. And there is an optional change that you could possibly pick Clea up for, and that is to go with Ascendant Vial. So if you select this way, you end up with the ability to immune debuffs for 8 full seconds, which obviously has huge potential for cheesing certain mechanics if a strategy calls for it. If you do to go down that path, however, you will end up with 3 Endurance Conduits and 1 Finesse Conduit, meaning you lose out on your Potency Conduit, which you'd be putting Proliferation in. So you would only be doing this if it really called for it in the strat, but it is an option that does exist. So that's Kyrian. Let's move to Venthia now and have a look. So Naja in Venthia, this basically equals more damage. So Naja has Thrill Seeker. Whilst in combat, you gain a stacking buff, which at 40 stacks is consumed, and you gain 20% haste for 10 seconds. So it's like a mini hero. Exacting Preparation, 20% more benefit from Rune Forges, Well Fed, and your Flask. Going down a path like this, you'll end up with 1 Potency, 2 Endurance, and 1 Finesse. So, the first and last trait in this tree are decent. You get a decent conduit setup as well. And I think Naja probably offers the most consistent output in regards to damage out of the Venthia trees. I think it's a really good general purpose Soulbind tree. Theatar. So this is a really interesting one. So Theatar Soothing Shade. So your spells have a chance to proc an umbrella that you can stand in, and you can get a mastery buff while standing in the Soothing Shade umbrella. Watch the Shoes. Death's Door frees you from roots and snares. And Wasteland Proprietary, activating your Venthia signature ability, grants you a versatility buff as well as a versatility buff for up to 4 allies. So this is good in regards to you are providing a versatility buff to your group. Theater, with a similar pattern to like this I've got up on the screen here, will grant you 1 potency, 2 endurance, and 1 finesse conduit. So he's interesting. As I mentioned, the thing is you have to stand in the umbrella to get the mastery buff in Mythic Plus, which can provide, its own difficulties. Aside from that, as I mentioned, Wasteland Proprietary is a nice buff of versatility to you and your group, and it activates every time you use Swarming Mist, which remember is on a 1-minute cooldown. So Theo is not a horrible option. I just think he comes with, sort of a lot of issues around that mastery buff. And, if you have to kite or you don't get an umbrella, say on pull, where you've got that ability to stand there while Swarming Mist is going off or something like that, then are you getting enough value out of that? He also kind of sits in the middle to me as well, as Naja seems to be the option you would go for more damage, and General Draven seems to be the way that you would go for extremely high tank damage and, overall tankiness. So I'm not too sure how he's going to sit at the moment. Venthia's last Soulbind, General Draven. So I think he's going to be the high Mythic Plus pick, basically. So first Soulbind for him is Service in Stone, which, as I've mentioned, is like a pseudo Will of the Necropolis. Damage below 40% of your HP is reduced by 10%. Enduring Gloom, Door of Shadows, grants you an absorption shield for 8 seconds, and Hold Your Ground, if you can stand still for the 4 seconds, increases your stamina and healing and persists for 6 seconds after you move. So going down this pathway on the screen, you'll get 2 potency conduits, 1 endurance, and 1 finesse conduit. So, as I said, Service in Stone, when you couple that up with the actual talent of Will of the Necropolis, it only bolsters the strength of that talent. The Venthia minor ability gets buffed with Door of Shadows into a percentage max HP absorption shield for 8 seconds, which is fantastic. You can use that for going into dangerous packs and things like that. Hold Your Ground. If you can stand still for just 4 seconds, you get an extra 10% stam and 4% increased healing, which you can certainly manage. It persists for 6 seconds, and then you can reset it by managing to stand still again. Even if you're kiting, you can still get far away to trigger that off again. I think Draven is absolutely the super pick for extremely high level keys. Or maybe not even extremely. Let's just go with high level keys. However, I kind of would compare General Draven to playing Season 4 and doing plus 10 to 15 dungeons and stacking versatility. It's nice, but you don't really need it, and there might be other issues that you need to address rather than going down this route. I really love everything that he has to offer in regards to just being absolutely tanky, but whether or not there's a level where he really comes into his own and you're just better off going with Naja otherwise, might very well be the way it is. I like the way that you get 2 potency conduits with him, which means a decent boost to your damage because you can take the Venthia specific Covenant ability to boost your damage on Swarming Mists, Impenetrable Gloom, and then you can take the other potency conduit with Withering, I can't remember what it's called, Withering more Heartstrike damage. So I really like his pick, and in the end of the day, it's a game, you go with what you want, but I like General Draven. Night Fae. So, Dreamweaver, as I mentioned at the start when we were talking about Covenants, the huge issue with Dreamweaver is at the top of the tree and it's Pod Tender. Until this gets redesigned, it has a real ability to cause issues. If you trigger Pod Tender, you will basically wipe your group whilst it's active. You go into a seed, you lose aggro, you can't be combat resed while it's going, so the mobs, the boss will go off and whack your group, they'll all die, and then you'll die. So for that reason, I'm just going to skip Dreamweaver and hope that Blizzard eventually fix it, because it actually looks like an alright Soulbind tree. Pod Tender just needs to be fixed. So we're going to start with Naya. So Grove Invigoration, dealing damage or healing, has a chance to increase your health by 1% and mastery for 30 seconds. This can stack, and using Death's Due will grant you 8 immediate stacks of this. Naya's Burrs, this is one of the bottom talents. If you can slow a target, you can get a decent chunk of damage via this trait. Keep in mind though, if there's a more powerful slow in your group and it's active on that target, it will actually overwrite Burrs and you won't get the damage from it. Another bottom choice that you've got is Naya's Poisons. When you interrupt something, you apply a dot for 30 seconds that deals damage. So they're two decent options. You'll take a similar path to this on the screen, giving you 2 potency, 1 endurance, 1 finesse. And as I said, you can either take Burrs, which is by far the better DPS option. And if you go down that way and you can make the most out of it, it'll change your conduits to 2 endurance, 1 potency, 1 finesse. However, if you can't make the most of it, then you are probably better off just going with the poison dot from interrupts. Corian. So Wild Hunt Tactics, your damage to targets above 75% health is increased by 10%. Wild Hunt Charge, Soul Shape out of combat becomes a charge and breaks when you go into combat again. Face your foes, when you're in front of a target, your spells and abilities decrease the damage they inflict on you by 3%. You're a tank, that's going to have solid uptime. Similar path like this on the screen, you'll have 1 potency, 2 endurance, 1 finesse. It's a survival Soulbind setup, basically. I think Naya will be better for general use if you're going down the Fae option, but Khorne is not a bad option for doing keys as Night Fae. Necrolord. So Bonesmith. So Forgeborn Reveries. Upon death, your armor continues to fight. Serrated Spaulders deals a fairly hefty chunk of shadow damage over time. It's got a 1-second internal cooldown and it overwrites itself, which is an issue. Arsenal Gemstone. This grants you crit % every minute, so it's just more damage. Or Arsenal Pendant. Defeating an enemy restores health for 6 seconds and stacks up to 5 times. So you've got 2 Soulbind options you can run down here pathwise. One is 3 endurance, 1 finesse. The other is 2 endurance, 2 finesse. It's by no means an amazing Soulbind tree, but it does offer some decent offensive value. In Mythic Plus, if you were going for survivability, you would go with Pendant. Otherwise, I think you will just go with Gemstone for the most of the time. Emini. So this is probably, the better of the 2 trees, I think. Emini, lead by example. So using your Covenant ability gives you main stat and a chance for your group for main stat as well. Magnificent Skin, which increases your max health by 5% for 30 seconds after using Fleshcraft. And Gnashing Chompers, killing mobs gives you haste up to 15% for 10 seconds. So path like this on the screen here, you'll end up with 2 endurance conduits, 1 finesse, 1 potency. Lead by example is a really decent trait, giving you and up to 4 nearby allies primary stat. You gain 5% and your allies can gain up to 2% for 10 seconds. You also gain extra main stat for each allied player in your party that's affected. So Emini is a good group buff in that regard. Magnificent Skin increases your max HP after using Fleshcraft, and Gnashing Chompers gives you a decent haste boost that you can stack. You can also change the Soulbind path and go right, which will give you ambulatory flesh, which means that you can channel Fleshcraft whilst moving, which obviously removes one of the issues with Fleshcraft. However, doing it means that you lose out on your potency conduit, which means you lose out on Brutal Grasp, which is a lot of damage, and then you just end up with another 3rd endurance conduit. So I don't really think that's the play. Alright guys, we are finally at the end, and sorry I know it's been long, but I just wanted to make it as thorough as possible, so I know a lot of you are still really wondering about what you do in Shadowlands, and the idea of this video was to help you. So Legendaries. So, this is sad. Out of all the Legendaries that got put in game, and I don't know if you've been excited about using a particular one, at the moment as things stand, you get 2 choices. You got 2. Super Strain and Brindor's Might. So, crafting recommendations for these is to craft Super Strain first to rank 1, then craft Brindor's to rank 1, then get Super Strain to max, and then lastly do Brindor's to max. So, let's start off with Super Strain. It's neck and chest for slots, and on your enchants that you're going to put on this for secondaries, you're going to put crit and versatility. We have no hasted plagues, so we're just statting this up for absolute pure damage. So your Frost Fever, Blood Plague, and Virulent Plague get applied basically is the way Super Strain works. So we apply Blood Plague, so when you do that, you'll see Frost Fever and Virulent Plague appear on the target when you are using Super Strain. They apply at a reduced effectiveness. It's nothing fancy. You get a slight runic power gain from the Frost Fever ticks, which turns into a, survivability increase slightly from the runic power gain, but it's mainly just a DPS legendary. Brindor's Might is feet and back slots. Secondaries you're going to apply to this one are Verse and Hastetility. Nice one. Versatility and Haste. Brindor's Death Strike refunds 15% of runic power spent if it heals you for more than 10% of your max health. In content, you are virtually guaranteed this refund. It synergizes really well defensively and offensively with the rest of our kit, and it's still strong compared to all the competition that we've got available for legendary choices. It's also worth mentioning with this as well, if you end up talenting Voracious, you will permanently get this legendary bonus no matter what, as Voracious will actually raise the minimum Death Strike heal value to 10.5%, so you will get the refund all the time. So that is it, guys. If you have any questions whatsoever, please hit me up in the comments below. And I will do my absolute best to get to them. Otherwise, come and join my Discord. There's a link in there. Go and join the Acarus DK community Discord. Always check the pins, check the FAQs in there. Mandel and Panthea are both in there and more than willing to help. There's a whole lot of people in that Discord that are absolutely willing to help people improve on DK and make these decisions. So thank you so much for checking out the video, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Come say hi on Twitch. Come join the Discord. I'll see you all next time. See you, fam.